Hey, Kevin West here from Invisible Insights, and I'm your host for the WPMA podcast called Shop Talk. This is our very first episode. We're really excited to kick this thing off, and we're going to kick it off with TJ Stratton from McClung's Millwork. And so, TJ, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about where you guys are at McClung's, and we'll just get the party started.
Yeah, McClung Lumber. We're in Salem, Virginia. Been there since 1913, so we're 112 years old. We've done a variety of things over that time, but right now we're producing custom solid wood molding and solid wood components. And I've been doing it. I've been there for, oh gosh, probably 20 some years at this point. Kind of grew up around it, but in official capacity for 20 years. And man, just excited about the next chapters of what we're doing.
That's so exciting. And you know, it's kind of interesting because, you know, the focus of today's episode is on small shops. And
Yeah.
so, how big is the shop? And has it always been that big? Tell us a little bit about the journey. And you were one of the guys at one point, right? And now you're kind of one of the guys leading the guys. So, walk us
Yeah.
through the journey and the headcount world and what you guys experienced.
Sure. We've been located in a couple different places, kind of within the same block. The original factory was a wagon works factory, so they built literally wagons pulled by horses. That was in the early 1900s, right when cars were getting ready to come around, so perfect timing on that. That place went out of business. The McClung's family members bought it. We were there for, oh gosh, probably 60 years in different capacities. We can talk through that if you want to. Um, Flood of 85, we were under 3 or 4 feet of water,
Oh,
which
wow.
is not good for a woodworking facility. So we moved across the street, which is up just enough in elevation to get us out of the way of that. Right now, we have about 10,000 square feet manufacturing space, 10,000 square feet of warehouse space, and we just purchased another 10,000 square foot building. This kind of catty corner to our current facility that we'll kind of inherit at the or start to occupy at the end of this year. So we're kind of preparing for that. Um, we have 18 full part-time employees, probably 15 full and then 3 part-time guys. And that's kind of steadily increased over the past maybe 10 to 15 years.
In the 20 years that you've been there, when it first started, how big a shop were you at that point to where you guys are currently?
Yeah, we were probably under 10 men total.
Okay.
That includes everybody. And then we're probably about, I don't know, maybe a sixth to an eighth of our size in total sales dollars per year. I don't have an exact figure on that, but
Wow.
yeah. So
So here you are, one of the guys, and this happens in small shops everywhere. Everybody who's listening to this podcast, who's got a small shop right now, is kind of going, "Okay, TJ, you know, you were one of the guys, and then you kind of transitioned into this role, this leadership role." Talk us a little bit through what you went through during that. Like what brought that whole series of positioning and pivoting that occurred during that season to take you where you are today?
yeah, man, I can answer that a bunch of different ways. One, it's a family business, but there's been multi families involved, and so there's a lot of dynamics at play. Some of them are huge blessings, and some of them are adversities. But
Okay.
it's I think it's a good thing overall. But it's makes it more complicated and more beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so, my dad was the first non-McClung's president. So it had had a history of McClung's presidents. We're in our sixth generation now. So the first 4 generations were all McClung's people. They kind of slowly left the business. They retained majority ownership, but just weren't in the operations anymore. So my dad took over. He did that for about 20 years, and he was one of those guys. And I think this will speak to a lot of the people that have small shops uh, incredibly skilled guy, incredibly hard worker. Um, but that's kind of how that was his chops. That's what he did. He wasn't necessarily a strategy guy, and so he got us to a place that was it wasn't healthy, but it was sustainable but he just didn't really know how to take that next step. And that's just who he was. Like I said, he was a phenomenal well, he's a great dad, but he was a great worker and a great leader, but just kind of stuck in the day-to-day stuff. And I even think that he had a lot of the vision on how to get us from where we were to kind of hopefully where we're going now, but he just never could make that step. But he primed the pump for us. So
Right.
we walked into something that was kind of ready to go in that regard. And luckily I do it with a couple of men that are incredible guys. We're a team, a leadership team. And I think between the three of us, and of course, like God's guidance and leading the whole time, first and foremost. But we've been able to take some of those steps that he saw from a distance but couldn't make.
So when you talk about the complication part of it,
Yeah,
and some of the struggles that occurred, what were some of those for you as you entered into leadership? Because you went
yeah,
from being one of the guys
yeah.
to now leading the guys. And that's a big transition for guys in shops, especially if they get a foreman role or a supervisor position or something of that sort. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, so I remember I was, I don't know, 13 or 14 years old, probably older than I would like to be, but my dad taught me how to shave by giving me a razor, walking out of the room and saying go after it. So I'm sure there was some blood involved. He did the same thing at McClung's. And he, like I said, he didn't have a lot of vision. But I think honestly, I think he did it the best way. People spend a lot of time talking about secession, how to do that well. I think he was working so hard, he was just tired, and just knew he didn't have enough inertia to take that next step. We were probably a little too young, but he saw that in us, and he went ahead and did it before we had to, and I think that really helped us. So he told us this is, I'm going to put you and my brother-in-law's name is Ryan, so we kind of run it together. We divide up tasks, but we're co-presidents, so we have kind of equal responsibilities in different areas. Um, he said, "Hey, I'm putting you guys in this slot. I'm going to leave for 2 months. I'm not going to be around, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to be your employee." So again, that was challenging for me to be the boss of my dad. I wouldn't say we thrive there. It takes a lot of grace. It really takes a huge humility on his part to receive all that. I think he did a good job with that. Um, yeah, man, that's how we did it. It was pretty raw. It was pretty dirty. I would say there was a lot of adversity in the beginning. Me and my brother-in-law kind of got thrown in a bath and had to kind of fight our quicksand maybe and had to fight our way out of it. I would say there was some tough moments in there, but I do think we learned the value of humility and the value of teamwork. And honestly, there's some things when you share leadership responsibilities with people, there's hard spots of this isn't my perspective, this is the way that I would do it. But I have come in this history or in the time that we've had together to really value and trust those differences. Because man, I would be running 100 miles an hour with blind spots everywhere, and he's more methodical, more process oriented, more slow. He's a slow adopter, slow to get there. But like I'm super thankful that I have that balance in leadership, and so it really helps us stay out of a lot of potholes. To be honest with you,
Well, and there's an element to that that's very real. And I think for anybody listening to the podcast, there's always a perspective of truth and grace.
yeah,
And it's a lot of times, at least in my experience, there often is a whole lot of grace and not a whole lot of truth.
yeah, sure,
What happens basically is it is the formulation, it is the development of the level of trust.
yeah, 100%.
Trust, trust ultimately to me is that bridge that you build between whoever that is you're working with or working for that's strong enough to bear the weight of truth.
Yeah,
And at
that's good.
that point, then grace, when it really does enter into the picture, it's real. Like
Yeah,
it's because truth came first. It's healthy.
yeah,
And I think that's where, when I look at, great teams, when I look at great leaders, when I look at, senior leadership teams or operations teams that are really functioning well, they have that there. There's that balance. And the humility comes along for the ride because that I always look at the phrase, I call it functional humility. There's a way about how you behave in humility that extends it. And your dad kind of did that.
Yeah.
As crazy as that was, as much of a leap as that was with the two of you, it ended up that was his way. And
Yeah.
I think based on how overwhelmed he was, as is many business owners, he just had to do it that way. It was like all in. I have to go an all in approach in order to make this happen. And so now you guys are navigating this thing. How
Yeah.
long did it take for you guys to feel like you had, maybe you still don't feel like you have your arms wrapped around it, but how long did it take before, let's talk about the level of command. Like where was that? How long did it take before you guys felt like, okay, hey, I think we're getting this?
Yeah. So, just I'm just sitting here thinking as you listen to it's been a while since I've been back to being 28, 29 years old and really thought through some. One decision that we made early on is we decided myself, Ryan, my brother-in-law, and there's another significant kind of family friend that we've done life together with, and he's kind of the third leg of that leadership stool. Um, and my dad. So the four of us, we've eaten breakfast together on Friday for ever since I was 28. So that's 16 years going on now. And I think that's been if I could keep one thing and throw away a lot of other things that we've done, I would keep that. Our shop works Monday through Thursday, 410s, so that Friday is a quiet day, anyways. Um, and honestly, it just gave us a chance to sit down, remember that we value each other, that we care about each other, that we enjoy each other. Sometimes in a week that can get lost. Um, but we do. And there are agenda items, there are things to talk through, but we also just spend time together. And I think what the gift out of that is we do have an incredible amount of unity with four very different perspectives. We usually come out in alignment, and that alignment usually translates down to our teams because we kind of know where each other's at. And so it does. It takes a lot of time. It's probably 2 to 3 hours, depending on what we're talking about. And sometimes you're like, man, I've got a plate full of stuff to do. Um, but I look forward to it every week, and I truly enjoy each one of those men. And I think it's just because I've had the opportunity to sit down with them once a week. So I'd say that's one thing. I honestly don't really remember your question. I got. I'm thinking about the bacon I'm eating on Friday. Man, you lost me.
Well, I think the thing here, and this is a great point because alignment is a very important thing in organizations that people don't think about.
Uh-oh.
And,
You went
and
mute on me, man.
yeah, the same page advantage, let's just call it that. And so when you have the same page advantage, there's nothing like it. And that means when all the questions are asked, you're getting the same answers. You're getting the same level of direction, the same sense of urgency, the same level of focus. And when you have multiple voices, it's critical that you guys have that, you're breaking bread together. I mean,
Yep.
that's the relationship, again, strong enough to bear the weight of truth comes
Yep.
into play. It allows you guys to really come together. And I'm willing to bet not every decision that's made there or any other room that you sit in when you have to make it isn't always 100% agreed on, but
Yep.
everybody's heard, the decision is made, and everyone takes the hill.
Yep.
And I think that is so important. We often go so fast. And I would say, and again, in a small business, you're touching all four walls.
Yep.
So because you're touching all four walls, it is so easy to blow over that piece of it instead of slowing down to go fast. And I think that is, to me, slow with people is fast, fast with people is slow. And this is that whole idea of you guys slowing down, spending time talking through and just even the time in is a big part. I imagine that was critical in terms of understanding where your dad was in context of the decisions you were making.
Yeah, 100%. And he's a very good resource to us now. He's not connected at all to the day to day. So there's times where he may be lost on exactly where we're at in the moment, but that experience and that what what he's been through is really nice sometimes. And he's getting older, he's getting grumpier, and sometimes he's like, yeah, you just need to do that. And that's the right thing for us to hear sometimes because I would say one of the challenges of having so many people in that room and working towards unity is we can move slow sometimes, which isn't bad, but it's something we have to be cautious of. And so he's our eject button guy. Let's do this. Stop talking about it. Just make it happen.
I bet that could be one of the key challenges of having three people.
Yeah,
And
oh, 100%. Also, if you go to three people with an amusement ride, there's always one guy in a different car. And so uh, that's something that I don't have a great answer to, except I'm just sensitive to the fact that it's good because you never have an even vote, right? But it's hard because it's hard to make sure everybody's heard and you come out with something that three people can be like, yep, that's what we're doing.
yeah, it's a challenge. Triadic relationships have a whole lot of history and actually studies behind them, especially in leadership circles. There's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of challenges, but I think your
Sure.
dad sets one of those big challenges there in his decision making,
Yep.
and I think that's allowing him to be able to do that. So he's a blessing in that respect. For
Absolutely.
let's pivot here real quick.
Yep.
So small shops, a lot of times work's coming all different ways. Um, the journey towards trying to find the most, productive, right, and profitable types
Yep.
of that we do come into play. But often you have to say no to some things and yes to other things. How have you guys navigated that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big shifts we made for my dad. He never felt like they were busy enough, so he just said yes to everything. Now, I think he realized that the moldings that we made, that having that molder on was probably the best thing for us, and he saw that a little bit. But man, we were doing everything, and in a small shop particularly, you just really don't have the equipment or resources to do everything. So we didn't have the right equipment. We didn't have enough guys that specialize in all the different areas. We were doing bid work, we were doing case work, we were doing full architectural millwork, and
Wow.
man, we were just running ourselves ragged. Because we weren't set up to do it, it was a lot of redos, a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors, a lot of inefficiency, and so we were in that hamster wheel, man. And I think I watched my dad get chewed up by that, and that was one of the decisions that me and my brother-in-law says, man, we are not going to get chewed up the same way that he did, and that helps to know. Um, and so we just started to slowly say, okay, what are we really good at? And then what are we not good at? And just start to separate that out. And we ultimately got down to we're really good at running custom wood molding. Let's do that all day. And we're really good at these solid wood components. We're not going to do full assemblies of casework and stuff like that. But if you need a solid wood CNC machine piece or radius molding or stair tread components or something like that, beam rafts, like we're really good at that. And we want to, that's a good lane for us. So we started saying no. We were able to remain relatively healthy and grew a little bit there, but we were very dependent on the bank of customers we had. And that was something that, 112 years old, you have somewhat of a reputation. So you can kind of bump along the bottom just with the relationships that you have. But we took advantage. I'm very thankful to Joe Hansen at Ellipticon. He's about our age and he was just stepping into leadership as well. They do what we wanted to do. They only do solid wood molding and then radius molding. That's pretty much it. They're in Wisconsin. They were about three times our size. So we're like, hey man, we're just kind of jumping into this thing. Can we just fly up there and pick your brain? And he was incredible. He basically took 2 solid days of his time, um, went through all of his challenges, all of his successes, where they were at, let us see the shop, really opened his doors to us, and that changed a lot of what we did. But the biggest thing we came away with was, like I said, we were fairly healthy at the time, but depending on that customer base that we had, and we would have a good, we'd be on a good trajectory. Then we would lose an important customer, and then we just drop straight down. and then it would take us 3 or 4 years to climb back up, and we just started seeing that kind of wave, and that's not an enjoyable. If you're not a surfer, that's not an enjoyable thing to be riding. Um, and when we went to Ellipticon, one of the biggest takeaways is they had three outside salesmen. They're three times our size, three outside salesmen. We had zero. It's like, well, if we're three times smaller, we should at least have one. Um, so that kind of led us down a journey of let's find that guy that can, if we're narrowing our lane, we're going to have to expand our base.
Right.
And so that's really the journey we went on was trying to lock in that guy, and that has been an incredible change for us. We hired him right in the beginning of COVID, perfect timing to hire an outside salesman. um, but what he's done is, you're always there when you lose a customer. It's not necessarily something that you did wrong. There's a variety of reasons why that happens, or sometimes some of your big guys are just down. Maybe they had a couple big jobs last year. They don't have that going on this year, or their business model adjusts a little bit. Um, and so what he's done is every time one of those guys drops, he's got three new people coming in that are filling that hole. So we're we're not riding that wave anymore, and that's been a really, really, really healthy thing for us. But that was completely inspired by just getting out of our own four walls, having enough margin to go visit somebody else and really learn from them. And again, I'm grateful. As part of the reason why I belong to the WPMA. I'm not doing a commercial right now. It's just literally what happened to me in our business, and I'm appreciative for the contacts that we have.
Well, and networking is a vitally important. And my mentor used to always say, "Your network is your net worth." And
Sure.
it's one of those things where we have connections with people, but we've never gotten to the point where we have the courage enough to leverage those. And if I can encourage anybody in the WPMA, it's get on the phone. Like, even if it's not going somewhere and the guy giving you 2 days, even a 30-minute phone call, an hour phone call could be a game changer. Just from hearing somebody who's a little bit further ahead than you, answering
Yeah.
questions that you're asking about where you're at and what they did when they were you, you know? And it's sometimes we go visit places or we see things and we're hearing them explain things at a level that they're doing way further advanced than we are. Often it's wise just to go and ask the dumb question or the small guy question of saying, what would you do when you were us? When you were our size, or factoring in this. And I do think that, bouncing into that pivot into doing the sales, moving from being an order taker
Yeah.
into the whole idea of sales is a pretty dramatic transition. You're now really attacking that whole, demand type of constraint that a lot of, people talk about, and which puts pressure on your production side of things as well. How did that go? Can you walk us through a little bit about, there's guys out there probably wrestling with that very thing right now. Do I hire a sales guy? Do I not? What do we do? How do we do that? Can you talk a little bit about that, TJ?
Yeah. I think that was one of the my brother-in-law was a slow adopter. It took us a minute to get there, but we were all a little timid on that one, to be honest with you, because like I said, my dad wasn't a businessman. I don't have a business degree, so that is those like kind of things are foreign to me as well. So we've had to back our way into a lot of it, um, and we didn't really have any. There was no model for what that was supposed to look like. Like, how are we going to pay this guy? What's his weekly stuff going to look like? Like, how do we go about that? And we know how to make stuff out of wood. I don't know how to do any of that, and so it was a leap. And honestly, we didn't thrive right out of the gate. We kind of put some feelers out. We thought we had a guy. We invested a couple months, and like he was moving from North Carolina, so put a pretty good amount of energy. And then like the week before, he's like, yeah, man, I can't come. And so we're like, okay, that one stung a little bit. But what that led us to is we had a guy that we had. It was actually a guy that used to sell us. And we knew had a ton of experience. And the best thing for us was to find somebody that we were already dealing with, that we had a history with. His job was kind of, for a lot of reasons, was kind of coming to a close where he was currently. And he was like, man, I think I got 5 good years left. I've worked in corporate sales stuff all my life. And I've been fighting battles, putting out fires, apologizing for mistakes. And he was like, I just want to end my career with a company that I believe in, that I feel like when I walk into a door, they're going to high five me, not shoot arrows at me. Um, and so I guess it was a good intersection. He brought enough experience and we had enough relationship trust with him to like, all right, this guy's not going to hose this. He's actually going to help us set up some of our structure for how we work with salesmen in the future. Because he's at that point in his career when he has just as much of an eye towards giving back as he does towards making an income, which was great for us. Um, and so he kind of helped us birth this thing a little bit, and he's doing a phenomenal job. Like I said, he had a ton of contacts, and so he understood what's a home run for us. We didn't have to spend a lot of time teaching him, like, please stay. We were really nervous in the beginning, like, you're going to bring us all things that we're going to end up saying no to. We had to go through the no battle again. But he got there pretty quick about what to win for us, and has brought us a lot of customers that end up being huge wins.
That's great. That's a great story. And anybody out there who's trying to hire someone in sales, there is a mystery to it. But again, I think sticking with it, you figure it out. And as you begin to figure it out, it does test your assumptions about a lot of things. Sales guys, once they have those relationships, they get out there, their ears to the ground, they get to know people, and they're going to tell you what's trending. They're going to tell you what's happening, and it keeps you on the front side on a lot of things if as long as you're in communication with them, and I think that's a powerful aspect of it. TJ, let me pivot a little bit here too, because obviously you guys have grown over the years, the employees that you have. I'd imagine you have some younger ones and some older guys. Talk to me a little bit about your employees and what you guys do specifically in a small shop. A lot of skill development takes place. Obviously cross training is vital in order for people to take vacations. So I think there's just a whole lot of aspects of, what makes a great employee team, and how do we build retention? How do you keep them? What are some things you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think that was another big decision for us is, when you're a really small shop, you have your fingers in everything from the initial phone call to the quoting to purchasing the material to getting out in the shop and making it. And a lot of times you're delivering it, and so you have a really good pulse on everything. But you also get to a point where you're like, this isn't sustainable either. And I think we decided if we were going to have a lifestyle that was different from my dad's, as well as kind of be able to grow and make some, we were going to have margin to be able to get out of the day to day stuff for periods of time and dedicate that to getting better and looking, taking our eyes up a little bit and just seeing what's over the next hill, and kind of making steps to get there. And so to
Hey,
do that, yeah,
TJ, talk a little bit more about margin here for
yeah,
a little, like, does that sound that's very important to you? And explain that a little further to everybody who's watching.
yeah. Man, it is, I think margin for me is just not getting caught up in the things that absolutely have to happen for that week. And my brother-in-law is better at that. I tend to, I start to see Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to have a tough time getting to our deadlines. My first instinct is to jump out there and start solving things and start getting us there. And I can do that. But if I do that, that's all I can do. If I can empower and help other people and teams to get there by themselves, now I can by myself. We're installing a new main blower motor at the end of the month. Well, that requires a bunch of steps. When that July 28th hits, if I don't start thinking about that today, making sure that goes well, making sure all of our orders are done before that to give us space to do that. If I don't align certain people, then that's not going to happen, or it's going to happen very poorly. And that's a big picture decision for us because that allows us to purchase more equipment. It paves the way for growth. And those are just kind of some of that's a job that only I can do. If I'm out there catching behind a molder, that's a job that 11 other guys can do. And so I want to try as best as I can to spend the most time doing the things that only I can do. Because if those don't get done, nobody else can do them. If I don't tail a machine, there's lots of other people that can pick up that space. Um, and so really, we've tried hard recently to empower some young kind of team leader guys to take ownership of big chunks of what we're doing. In fact, there's one guy, we had this one customer, one product line, it's probably 25% of our business, huge deal. He was talking to us about quoting some of these very specific, difficult, and I looked around and said, I have no idea what he's doing. So I may need to get a little bit deeper, but he's purchased me a ton of freedom to focus on other things. And so that's been a huge gift. It takes what does it take? It takes you have to be okay with it not being perfect. You have to let
Yes.
those guys learn from their mistakes. You have to be okay with some shortcomings sometimes, knowing that they're going to grow through it, that they're going to get better, that you want that ownership. And honestly, for them, like it feels good to own things. You know, you're very responsible to things you own, to things that you feel like you're just being told what to do all the time. There's only a certain level of care you're ever going to have about that. And so that's been one of the more fun things we do. It's cool to watch those guys grow. Um, I know if they're growing as leaders in our shop, they're better husbands and they're better men in the community, and that's part of that accountability piece. That's always a tough thing for me to hold those guys accountable. I, prefer just everybody go do the work and be great and let's high five at the end. But I know accountability is that other piece that combined with love that it's a training ground for them to be better outside of here too. And so we care about that part and we try to use all of those shaping moments to care about like both halves of the person.
That's
Try to.
huge. That's huge. And it takes me back to, I always look at the journey that people have in organizations. And, I look at it through four stages: aware, involved, engaged, and invested.
Uh-huh.
It's never a one person way to get there. It's always a multiple level person way to get there. And that one way is to inspire and extend trust. When you inspire it and you extend it, when they know they feel, then they feel trustworthy. And
Yeah.
then anybody who feels that moves closer to that engaged and invested component of what's going on. I think that's where retention often lives. But then when you care about me as a person, when you can connect with me on a personal level as well, that takes it to a whole nother level. And I know that's something you guys are passionate about. And it's something just even in a phone call we had the other day where you were just expressing, this how you extend care to everyone in the organization, which is a huge benefit to being in a small shop. It
Yeah.
is. It's definitely, and it should be leveraged. It's something that should be leveraged. And it goes back to the idea of culture and how important culture is. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you built that in your organization? Because culture is one of those things that can easily get missed. Easily get missed. What's that look like for you guys?
Yeah. My cat's getting ready. Yep. There you go. You got um Yeah, I think, I help coach a high school basketball team as something I do, and we talk a lot about culture, and really that's the if you can have a lot of things in place, and if you don't have culture, you don't have a whole lot there. You just have players, and I think it's the same thing in business. If you don't have a good culture, you're just not gonna guys aren't going to go to war today if they don't know what they're fighting for, if they don't know who they're fighting with, and if they don't have a North Star to be shooting for. And so, for us, we are a Christian company. It hasn't always been that way, but that is one of the cool things that my dad started to put in place. So we're faith based, and we don't care where you're at on that line, whether we really don't care where you are spiritually. We just want you to be aware that that's part of what we're doing. And so we start every day with a devotion in the morning, and it's just a good time to sit down and think about why we do what we do, what's important to us, what matters beyond the sawdust.
Mhm.
And then we have a couple programs like a Go and Do Likewise, where we give some guys a certain amount of resources a year. They see people in their community that they need to or that has a need, and we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to meet that need through, like, we're going to work really, really hard, but we're going to have some opportunity to be a blessing to people, and there's a joy that comes along with that too. So we talk about why we work hard, and then we do try to we try to care about those guys. I tell them, like, I want them to have enough in the reserve that when they go home, they can do their real job. And so we try to care about that part of them, and we don't
The
always
real
get.
job is what now? And the real
Yeah,
job
it's
is
being a husband, being a father, being a son, whatever that looks like, in your own personal home. Those are kind of the first level priorities, and so we do, and there's a lot. If you, like you said, a small business, I think one of the things I love about it is you get to know the people that you're working with. You get to, I tell them I spend more times with them than I do around my family. So they're very important people in my life. That's why we spend a long time trying to bring in good ones. One, we're not great at firing people. So I need them to be good from the start. But two, they're just going to play an important role in sharpening us and sharpening each other. And so we try to be careful about that. And there's a lot of little opportunities to try to care about people and to have an opportunity to care about people. And we were talking the other day, when you're sitting in your rocking chair and you're retired, I'm not there yet, but I think those things are much more important than our KPI of how many feet of lineal molding we got out last week, or how much the machines are on. And I don't get me wrong, totally care about all those things, because we don't have any opportunities if those aren't going well.
right.
But it kind of try to keep it in perspective. And that's one of the things I'm glad. I am thankful, for the guys we have. I'm thankful to serve on a leadership team, because it keeps us from lowering our eyes too much. There's always a lot of accountability there to make sure we're doing the right thing. So, and again, there's a lot of things we don't get perfect, man. I tell any, I just hired a guy today, and I was like, this is what we're shooting for. You might walk out here tomorrow, and that may not be what you encounter, and we'll try to get better. But I think all those guys know what the target is.
Right. Well, and I think that's it's a journey of continuous improvement.
Yeah,
It's a journey of being committed to always being a student, being
yeah,
really humble, and knowing that every day is a new day and it's a gift, and you just live in the fullness of that gift.
yeah,
And so I think that's kind of where I think the beauty of being in a small business, being in a small shop, being able to shoulder up with everybody, having the margin to work in it and on it is
yeah.
really important. Inspiring, extending trust, building that culture, caring about people, all those things. When you start adding all that up, it's really powerful. It really is, and I think that's something to be proud of.
It's fun. One thing you just talked a little bit about continuous improvement. And that is something that's a big deal to us. And that's part of empowering the guys. It's like, anytime somebody has an idea, my dad told me this as well, but you really try to listen to that and give ear to it, and you want to make sure it's a solid idea. But if somebody sees a way to make something better, I'm more apt to take a risk there, and let them have a little bit of rope and see. It may or may not be better for us, but I want them to feel like they can do those things, because ultimately we're a custom shop. We're making 1,000 decisions a day. Those guys are. I can't make all those decisions for them. So I need to create a framework to help them make good decisions, the decisions that align with our priorities. But they're gonna be making them. And so I want to give them the ability to be courageous in those decisions, to make them well, um, and to have the authority to make them. So, and then, like I was telling you the other day, we do try to, people don't want to work in a stagnant pond. People want to work in a river that's moving, flowing. We're getting better. We're heading somewhere. We're doing things. And so we try to be a little bit quicker to make those improvements. So guys see, yeah, I'm working hard, but my environment's getting better. I can see us moving towards excellence. I can see us pursuing excellence. We're a long ways from it. Literally, if you walk through our shop, you would be like, no, I don't know if they're at the excellent spot yet. But, but, um, but I think that speaks to a team of guys, and they want to be a part of something where they feel like not only it's getting better, but I'm making decisions every day that are helping us get to a better place. And I think that's attractive to people and they want to be a part of it.
That's huge. And on that note, TJ, I
Yep.
think this is pretty good wrap for our first podcast ever of Shop Talk. And so I want to thank you and appreciate your time and your energy and sharing your story. I think it's really powerful. And I think anybody in a small shop out there is should be really helped by just taking time and listening to this. One thing real quick is if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I was just thinking in my head, I owe somebody 2 days. Somebody gifted me 2 days. So I owe somebody some time somewhere. Feel free to email me. I think that's in the WPMA directory. Feel free to reach out to Michelle. She'll give me my cell phone number. I'm happy to field any calls that moves people towards a place of being a little bit better. Our businesses, they're kind of like our wallets. You want to show off pictures of your grandkids. It's something we've invested a lot of time in. So I found people are willing to talk about it, and I'm the same way. If you want to make, if there's anything I can ever do to help anybody out, I'm happy to unzip as much as I can and be helpful.
That's awesome. And that's the power of networking. That's the power of WPMA. TJ, thanks for being here. TJ Stratton, everybody. And I look forward to future episodes. And TJ, I hope to bump into you sometime soon, hopefully at a conference or something like that. And we'll get a chance to hang out. But take care, everybody. Thanks, TJ. Thank you. And have a great evening, week, whenever you listen to this, drive home in the car, whatever that is. And we'll see you next time on the WPMA Shop Talk.